Hi, my name is Leon Starr, and welcome to video 5 in the Road Subsystem Modeling series. In this video, we'll model the various ways that lanes are used. With regard to the direction of traffic, there are only two possible types of lane, unidirectional and bidirectional. We model this fact by subclassing lane into these two types. Our model makes a strong assertion. Every lane, anywhere in the world, is one of these two types, period. From our previous video, we know that every unidirectional lane flows within a conduit. This makes sense, since a conduit is defined as a directed flow of traffic. Therefore, a unidirectional lane constitutes all or part of a conduit. Each instance of conduit consists of at least one unidirectional lane. The model asserts then that there is no such thing as a conduit without any unidirectional lanes, and there is no such thing as a unidirectional lane that does not form part of a single conduit. Furthermore, the model says that a unidirectional lane may not exist independently of a conduit. All this probably sounds tedious, but you may appreciate that we are carefully constructing a logically consistent model, and all of these details matter. We've been using that tree-shaped generalization relationship a few times now in our videos, and we should clarify precisely what it means in our models. Using our example lanes, we can populate this set first with the unidirectional lane instances. Let's give them arbitrary names. Now the bidirectional lane, we've only got one here, and we'll name that as well. The two subclasses at the bottom of the relationship represent a partitioning of the lane superset. Note that each instance is simultaneously a member of two sets, its subset and its superset. The logical implication is that each instance of a lane must be either unidirectional or bidirectional. And each bidirectional lane is a lane, as is each unidirectional lane. From here we can see that there are many other ways to classify lanes. There are driving lanes where we can freely travel. There are restricted usage lanes where only certain types of vehicles can drive. An exclusion lane forbids travel or even parking. Here's a space between two adjacent lane divisions. Is this a lane? Here's a bike lane. What about this space in between the conduits? It looks like a lane, yet there is no direction of travel, so it cannot be a lane. How is it handled? We can even argue that the divisions between the curb and the outermost lane constitutes a parking lane. And of course, there's the shoulder. Let's start off by modeling all these lane types the wrong way. So we take unidirectional lane, and we subclass it out to driving lane. And then we have bike lane, shoulder lane, say there's a taxi-only lane, maybe a bus lane, an exclusion lane, a parking lane. Oh wait, we forgot something, a median lane, maybe a commuter lane. Who knows, one day we might encounter a horse lane. The worst thing we could do would be to just subclass unidirectional lane into every type of lane we encounter. The endless inventory approach leaves us with an always incomplete and uncertain model. A model that has to change every time we see something new is reactive, not predictive. Think about the specializations we have done before. Left-right edges, paired and unpaired conduits, 3 road segment traffic flow possibilities, and so forth. All of these specializations have the property that it is unlikely that they will change. Fluid, highly variable information should change in the data that populates the model, while fundamental rules are expressed in the model structure. That way, new real-world data can be accommodated without necessitating any change to the model itself. We want a stable, certain model that predicts what we will see. So let's try this again. We can definitively say that all unidirectional lanes are either driving or non-driving lanes. You shouldn't be driving in a non-driving lane. You might park there for a bit or cross over, but you aren't supposed to be traveling along in it. For non-driving lanes, we really only have 4 types that should apply universally. First, we have shoulder lanes. They vary a lot by region, but we can characterize them in terms of width, drop-off, pavement if they exist at all, and so forth. Dedicated bike lanes are not to be confused with the driving lane that shares space with bicycles. Then the exclusion lane, which is just any lane that you aren't supposed to drive in and has no other vehicle purpose except possibly some illegitimate temporary parking. Maybe you can tell I've driven a lot in San Francisco. And then there are parking lanes. For non-driving lanes, this should give us good coverage, but unlike our previous generalizations, there is no clear principle assuring us that we won't discover yet a 5th subclass. That said, we do have a way to compensate for such discoveries with a powerful modeling trick that I will demonstrate in the next video. But there's even one I can show you now. Remember the elevated bus island? We can handle that by considering it to be an exclusion lane that contains one or more islands. If there are multiple, they would all be lined up in the same lane with gaps in between. Note that the hollow arrows allows for the painted exclusion lane example where there is no island at all, and by definition an island must be within a single exclusion lane. So, coming up in our next video, with the lanes where we don't travel out of the way, we can use that modeling trick I told you about earlier to handle the wide variety of driving lanes.